Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Willamette. Would you join us as we stand and sing? Sing, let our praise. Let our praise be your welcome. Let our songs be a sign we are here for you. We are here for you. To you. To you our hearts are open, nothing here is hidden. You are our one desire. You alone are holy, only you are worthy. God, let your fire fall down. Let our shout spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so kind. Never There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Let us fill this place with His praise. Come on, yeah.
All things have away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things again, we are just so happy that you're here with us today at Willamette. We are just going to take the next couple moments to turn to someone next to you and say hi.
Well, good morning, friends. Great to see you. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Brandon. I'm one of the pastors here at Willamette. I was thinking about church this week and how we are a gathering of broken people who are pursuing after a great God. It's so good to have you here with us on this journey along with us. On the way in this morning, you received one of these. It's our connection and bulletin. Love for you to read over that information, see maybe how you could get better connected here in what we're doing. Also, if you're newer with us, we'd love to know that you're here. We'd love to maybe answer any questions. So you can fill out that bottom part, rip it off, and drop that in the Give and Connect box after the service on your way out. Again, so glad that you're with us on this journey. We have a few more things we'd love for you to know about, but rather than listening to me screw it up, we thought we'd put it on a video today. All right, enjoy.
Hi, Willamette. Thank you so much for being an amazing church. Thank you for sending off the down brows with your love and appreciation. It's really been fun to celebrate them with you over these last few weeks. You might be wondering what's next for Willamette Christian Church, and we want to assure you that we believe that God has something really special planned for our next. We're really excited, and I know it's hard at times of change and transition to be excited, but we really are. So what does that mean to be a church family who is seeking God's next? It means that we believe that God's going to work through you and in you in this next season. He's going to continue to call all of us forward as he's preparing someone to join our team and to lead this campus. And so for the next couple of months, here's what you can expect. You can expect to see some of our regular teachers and pastors leading you on Sunday mornings. People like Grant Hickman, Brian Becker from our Hope City campus, John Furman from our Beaverton campus. They're going to be here to teach and lead, along with other teachers and leaders that you've come to know and love. Plus, we've invited some friends from around the nation who really love the ministry of Willamette. They're going to come in and teach us on some weekends as well, while we're in an intentional search for the man that's going to come in and lead this campus for the future. Here's what we need from you. We need you to keep being the church. Here's what I've always counted on from all of you over these last decades, is that as a 60-plus-year-old church, it's always been about what God's doing in you and through you, and we know that won't change. So we need you to keep pressing in, not to sit back and watch, but to press in. Continue leading and loving people the way that you have been. Continue participating in men's and women's and home community. Continue serving this community with the love and the care that you've always shown. And then step up our prayers and step up our hopefulness and our anticipation for who God's got in the future for us. If I can be of any help to you, or if any of the staff can serve or support you as you're seeking to lead out and help people to know, love, and follow Jesus, please reach out to me, okay? Don't hesitate. We're here for you. All of us love you and care about you very much. One thing I want to share with you is that on March 14th, we're going to do a special prayer and worship night. That'll be a fun night for all of us to come together, really commit this process to prayer, celebrate what Jesus is doing in our ministry in this season, and just have time together as a family. I hope you'll join us, and I hope you'll put that in your calendars. Again, we are so grateful for each one of you. We're so thankful for this church. We're thankful for each of you who presses into what Jesus has for you personally and who's praying for what Jesus has next for us as a church. We can't do it without you, and so thank you for the part that you have played and the part that you will play in the future of being the church to this community. All right, but there are some fun things that are happening right now in our ministry, and one of those really special things is the IF Gathering happening on February 8th and 9th at our Beaverton campus. This is for all of the women in our community, and especially those here at the Willamette campus, is for you to join us, bring your friends, and participate in something that's really, really special. Take a look at this video.
There she is, your friend at Just Maria. You like her. She's got 1,000 followers and rocks a floppy hat. She tried goat yoga before it was cool. You like her. Her essential oil game is on point, and she's done every Beth Moore Bible study twice. You like her. Her house is always spotless, her kid's birthday party looks like something off of Pinterest, and she still has time to travel. You like her, but you'd like her better if you knew real Maria. Be a real person. Join with real women at IF Gathering this February. Women from all 3 of our campuses will join together at our Beaverton campus for live stream teaching from our IF friends in Dallas, lots of fun and games, and time to connect with real women. Bring a friend and join us at IF Gathering, where we'll gather to seek God's wisdom for real life with real women.
Encourage anybody here that if you're a woman, I really want to encourage you to go to the IF Gathering. It's going to be an amazing time. My wife has been to it for the past couple of years, and she just absolutely loves going. And every time God has something new for her that really stirs in her a new affection for Him. And just out of curiosity, in light of that video, is there anybody here that's actually done goat yoga? Like, would you be brave enough to raise your hand? Yeah, I see one. Somebody back here has actually done goat yoga. Okay, here's what we're going to, because you were brave and you went first, I've got 50% off an IF Gathering ticket, okay? So here, I'm going to hand this to you, and we're going to do our best sun salutation and just get it all the way back there to her for taking are there any dudes that have done goat yoga? Any guys? Anybody? Nope? Okay, you can keep your man card, I guess. And so, I really do want to encourage you to jump into the IF Gathering. It's going to be a great weekend. If we haven't met, my name's Grant, and I'm one of the pastors here. And it's my privilege this morning to jump into this series that we've titled If Only. You see, it was a few years ago now. It's been a little while, but there was this weatherman by the name of Phil Connors. And Phil, he was a good weatherman, but his office there at the news station, they decided that he needed to get out of the studio and go do some live reporting. And he really did not want to go do the live reporting. And everybody knew that, but he didn't have a choice. And so he and one of his colleagues named Rita and a cameraman named Larry, they jump in a car and they go to do this live reporting. They get to their destination a day before the event, and so he goes to bed after checking in his bed and breakfast there in the town that they were going to do the reporting from. And he wakes up the next morning, his alarm goes off. Sonny and Cher are singing "I've Got You, Babe" on the radio. And he just hits the alarm off. He gets up. He goes through the day. He goes out and he gives his live report, and he's half-hearted about it. He's half-hearted about it because he really doesn't understand why he has to be there and do a report on Puxatawny Phil and whether or not he's seen his shadow and we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter. Well, he does the report, and he'd love to just go home, but Rita and Larry, they want to stick around for a little while later. So Phil, he just goes back to the bed and breakfast, and he goes to bed. And he wakes up the next morning, and his alarm goes off, and Sonny and Cher are again singing "I've Got You, Babe." And he's like, man, I know radio stations play the same songs over and over and over, but apparently this Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, there's not much going on here. And so he just turns it off, only to wake up and realize he's in a time loop. And he's about to live the exact same day over and over and over. Now, if you haven't seen it, that's the plot line of Groundhog Day. Right? It's a movie that's featuring Bill Murray as Phil Connors. And he wakes up and he lives the same day over and over and over again. And once he realizes it, he goes, well, wait, I'm going to just try to figure things out, because this movie, it's sort of a commentary on life. Because what Bill Murray in this movie has to do is this character, Phil, he's trying to determine his meaning in life, his purpose in life, and he's trying to find it. And so he, like so many of us, he does different things. He goes through the one-night stand phase and goes, hey, I'm just going to indulge here. And he goes through binge drinking, and then he begins to just learn as much as he can and to gain different skills and different experience, where he spends some time learning to play the piano, and he learns the skill of ice sculpting. And I'm like, bro, you have all the time in the world, and that's the hobby you're picking up? Like, there are cooler hobbies than that, but he is in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, so there's not much going on. This week, and just sort of researching the background behind this movie, I may have wasted way too much time researching this film. These are the sacrifices I make for you, okay? I went down a rabbit hole, and there are theories, websites dedicated to theories about how long he was in this time loop. And one of them, the one that most people adhere to, was that he was in the time loop for 12,395 days. That's 34 years. 34 years of what is my meaning in life. 34 years of what is the purpose for my existence. And you know how the movie ends up. He eventually, at the end of the movie, realizes that for him, it's not about himself, and it has to be about other people instead. And if I was to ask you, hey, would you like to live the life that Connors lived in this movie? Would you like to live that and just really be able to go and experience and find out the meaning of life? Most of us would say, no, I do not want to sign up for the same day over and over and over again. That sounds more like hell than it does life. But then as I thought about it, if you step back from that just a little bit, you go, wait, isn't that really what most of us are doing? Okay, it's not the same day over and over and over again. But we are going through life doing the next thing and the next thing and trying to find what is the meaning and what is my purpose. And okay, maybe it's this thing over here, and so I'm going to pursue that. And we go, okay, that's not true. And so maybe it's this over here, and we pursue that, and it's not true. And we go through life not in a single day time loop, but in the same cycle of life, trying to find our purpose and our meaning. It's the story of Groundhog Day. But you see, it's not just a fictional story, it's a story of real life as well. There's a man in the Old Testament named Solomon. And Solomon was the third king of the nation of Israel after his father David. And Solomon, he becomes king right as Israel is entering into the peak of its height as a nation. And there's this moment where God comes to him at the beginning of his reign, and he says, Solomon, because of who you are and what your father has done, I'm willing to give you anything that you ask of me. Ask me anything and I will give you that. And Solomon says, then God, I want more wisdom and I want more knowledge. I want more knowledge and I want more wisdom. That's what I want. And God says, wonderful. And because you didn't ask for more money, I'm going to give you all the wealth in the world. And because you didn't ask for your enemies to be defeated and to have a season of peace as a country, I'm going to give that to you as well. And because you didn't ask for a long, prosperous life, I'm going to give that to you in addition to the wisdom and the knowledge. And so Solomon does something for us. Solomon, always keeping God in view, but just sort of testing the way that the world works, he goes on a journey. And he goes on a journey to find out, is there anything else in this world that can satisfy? Is there anything else? Because after all, I'm the king, so it means whatever I want to do, I get to do. Nobody's going to tell me no. And I'm now wealthy, so I have all the resources in the world to do whatever I want to do. And I can glean as much. So I'm going to go see if there is meaning outside of God in this world. And he takes all that he knows and he writes a book called Ecclesiastes. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes during this series. This morning, we're going to be in chapter 1. You can go ahead and begin to turn there. As always, the words will be behind me on the screen. And if you were to just study the book of Ecclesiastes, you might get a little bit depressed at the beginning. Because basically, Solomon comes and he says, I pursued all of these things, and I found out they make terrible gods. That they don't give you the meaning. They don't give you life. And he did for us this pursuit of meaning so that we don't have to. And yet we all still do. And so during this series, we're going to look at this idea of, well, if I only had more. If I only had more wealth, if I only had more resources, then I could be X. If I only did more, I just need to keep grinding and keep working and just get over the next hump, and then I'll be on the other side and life will be good again. Or if I only experienced more. If I could just experience a little bit more in life and have some different experiences, or if I had not experienced things, if I had different experiences, then my life would be better. But this morning, we're going to look at this idea of if I only knew more. If I only knew more. If I only had a little bit more wisdom. If I only had a little bit more education. If I had a little more intelligence. If I was just a little bit smaller, or the way we phrase that, if I only knew then what I know now. We're always saying, gosh, if I just knew a little bit more, then life would be better. And so Solomon, in the book of Ecclesiastes, here's what he has to say. I, the teacher, was king of Israel. I lived in Jerusalem, and I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. He goes, listen, I'm the teacher. I have gained all of this wisdom and all of this knowledge, and I have devoted myself to something. This idea of devotion is that he set his mind, he set his heart, and he said, there's a season of my life that I am just going to focus on accumulating more knowledge. That I'm just going to get as much knowledge as I can, as much wisdom, and I have set towards that to understand and to explore everything under the sun or everything under heaven. If it can be done, I've done it, and I've explored it, and I've used all of this knowledge now to see the world. And in doing so, he discovered something in the next verse. You see, he says that I soon discovered that God had dealt a tragic existence to the human race. I observed everything going on under the sun, and really, it's all meaningless. It's chasing the wind. I've done it. I've gotten all of the knowledge that there is, and I realize that God has dealt a tragic existence because if I use intellect and intelligence as a God, there's always more things I don't know. And as soon as I find something out, I realize what I don't know. And so it's just a continual loop to go and get more and more. And he says that is a tragic life that's been given to us. It's like chasing the wind. And he takes all of the knowledge that he got and he says, you want to know the things that I learned that are true and that you can hold on to? It's these two things. What is wrong cannot be made right, and what is missing cannot be recovered. I've gotten all the knowledge in the world, and here's what I know. If it's wrong, it can't be made right, and if it's missing, you can't find it. The second one, it's this idea of if it's missing, then you can't count it. That if you're going to go through and count the wealth or count something in your country, he goes, if it's missing, you can't count it. You're not going to be able to find it. If it's wrong, it cannot be made right. It's this idea of if something is crooked, you can't straighten it back out again. And even if you do try to right the wrong or to straighten it back out, you're eventually just going to lead to another wrong. There's always another thing to straighten out. And sometimes in our genius experience that we've just had representative in this room, when you straighten one thing out, something else goes wrong. Right, I know some of you in this room, you're of the age that you can remember a time when we were, as a society, trying to battle high cholesterol. And you would go to your doctor and they'd run the tests and determine that you had high cholesterol. And so they'd say, here's what we need you to do. Here's this medicine or that thing. But we also want you to stop cooking with butter and start cooking with margarine. Use margarine because it's going to help lower your cholesterol. And so people went and they did that. And then science caught up to it. And they were like, hey, actually, stop cooking with margarine. Go back to butter. Because what's in margarine is actually worse for your cholesterol, this new cholesterol that we just found, than butter was. So sorry, we had all this new information that we thought was going to help us, and it just created another wrong. Or staying in the food category. I can remember like these times of people going, hey, don't eat eggs. It's not good protein. It's bad protein. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, you can eat eggs now. And they're like, no, eat the egg whites, but not the egg yolks. And then a few months later, they're like, no, eat the egg yolks, but not the egg whites. And I'm like, what if I just chop it all up and eat the shell and everything? And is that good? And all I really know about eggs is I've liked one on Instagram recently. Right? And just like, what do I do? I can't keep up because science is constantly going. And what has been made right, there's always another wrong. I read an article recently. This one scares me a little bit, but it's what some modern science is saying, and it was an entire article on sunscreen. Right? Because I was taught my entire life, when you're going to go out in the sun, you want to lather up with sunscreen because you don't want to get skin cancer. The UVA, UVB rays, something that's going to cause skin cancer, and that runs in my family. So I'm like, yeah, I want to be safe with this. This article I was reading, it said, yeah, that's true, but we're now finding that we're using so much sunscreen that we're not getting, even when we are out in the sun, we're not getting enough vitamin D. And even though a lot of us in this room maybe take vitamin D pills, the newest research coming out on vitamin D drops is they actually don't really do anything. That we need the sunlight, because if we're not getting the sunlight, yeah, we're not going to get skin cancer, but the sun does other things for us and we're getting sick in other ways because we're using so much sunscreen. In addition to that, the sunscreen that we've been using has some chemicals in it, that those chemicals in the sunscreen then get onto our bodies, then we go into the ocean and the salt water pulls them off, and those chemicals are starting to kill the reefs all around the world. And so I'm killing off an entire ecosystem so that I don't get skin cancer that I'm not going to die from and is easily treatable. Now hear me. Put your sunscreen on, okay? I'm not a doctor. I don't want you to come in this summer after going on your trip to Hawaii or to Arizona or whatever and be like, you're beet red. And you're like, well, you said, listen, it was one article, okay? I don't know the thing. But what it reminded me is, man, man, the more and more and more we think we know, the more crooked we realize things are. That's what Solomon is saying. He's saying, hey, what is right cannot be made, or what is wrong cannot be made right. Because as soon as you do it, it's just going to go crooked again. But that wasn't enough for him. He decided to double down. He said, okay, no, I'm dedicated. Remember, I'm devoted to this. So here's the next verse. So he says, listen, I said to myself, self, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. I got to a point where I could look around and go, I am the smartest man in the room. I am the wisest person. No king before me has ever been wise. I am the wisest person. Humble, not so much. But wise, yes. And in all of my wisdom. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom, to madness and to folly. With all that he gained, he goes, I'm not just going to gain good wisdom. I'm going to pursue folly as well. And the things that I know, I'm going to just get all of it. And I learned firsthand that pursuing all of this is like chasing the wind. You see, the greater my wisdom, the greater the grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. That's the conclusion that he came to. This rat race of just making your intellect a god and the number one thing to go after. And if people would just understand then to say that that is what's going to satisfy, it just increases your grief. Because you realize there's more that you don't know, and there's more that you can't answer. And then you get frustrated with other people because they don't understand what you understand. And now you're separated in a relationship from people because of the thing that you have made a God that wasn't ever supposed to be God, and your grief has increased. An image that I saw of this a while back, and I spent some time this week trying to find it to show it to you, but it was a statue that I saw once upon a time. And when I describe the statue to you, you're going to be like, dude, you had some weird Google searches this week. And I did. And it was this statue of a guy in a garden, and he's standing like this, and he's pulling a cart behind him. And as he's pulling this cart, his body is of normal stature, but his head is arched backwards, and his neck is elongated because what's on the cart is his oversized head. And his oversized head is there, and he's having to drag his brain and his head behind him. And I saw this statue, and I don't know what the artist meant by it, but what I saw in that is I was like, that's what Solomon is saying. Solomon is saying that if I'm going to pursue knowledge and wisdom and my intellect in a way that I say, this is the thing, that if I can only get enough of this, then my life would be better. He says what ends up happening is you're like a man who has to drag his head around and now can no longer help anyone because you have to carry the own weight of your brain. It brings you sorrow and it brings you grief. Maybe an illustration of this from our culture, there's a man who went by the name of Frank Lloyd Wright. You maybe have heard of that name. He's known as the greatest architect that America has ever had. His understanding and his knowledge of lines and design and architecture, and no one in America has even come close to him. He designed over 1,000 structures and buildings, and hundreds of them have been made all around the world. And he gave some really significant contributions to the architecture world. One of the things that he came up with and kind of coined was this idea of organic architecture. It's the thought that you should be able to build a building that fits into the surroundings of nature around it, rather than come in and destroy the aesthetic of a place for the sake of a building. And so with that in mind, he gave us these beautiful buildings. But another one that he built, it was in the 1900s. And he built this one in the 1900s for a family, Mr. and Mrs. Darwin Martin. He's in Buffalo, New York, and this is the home that he built for them. And if you look at it, it's an architectural masterpiece. The lines are all really, really clean, and it all works together so well. Well, we have the dialogue in written form between Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, and Darwin Martin, the homeowner. And as they went back and forth, at first it's kind of what you would expect to see. But over time, you could see that the relationship started to bitter and to go sour. And that there wasn't a good working relationship between these two men. And one gentleman that I read on the story about this, he put it this way. Frank Lloyd Wright was an egomaniac of gargantuan perspective. He saw his role as the architect and builder, and the Wrights as the ignoramuses who were lucky enough to have the opportunity to live in and pay for a Wright-designed home. You see, Frank Lloyd Wright determined that he was the architect. He's the expert. I know more about this subject than anyone else, and so you need to listen to me. I know what good architecture is. And he built this magnificent home only for Darwin and his family to move into it. And just a short time later, the Martins moved out. Because although it was beautiful, it wasn't functional. You see, in all of his wisdom and knowledge about architecture, Frank Lloyd Wright had lost sight of the fact that you build a home not for what it looks like, but for the people that are going to live in it. This is what happens when we replace the God that loves us with the God of knowing more. Is we miss out on caring for people. We miss out on knowing God himself because we just want to get more information. And it puffs us up. Scripture says that knowledge puffs us up. It makes us prideful to the point that we walk around and we feel like, I know it all. And if I could just explain it better to you, then you will understand. And because we know so much, we have a hard time dealing with and having a conversation with people that don't understand what we know. It's what psychologists call the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is this idea that once you have learned something, it's impossible for you to remember what it was like when you didn't know that something. Once you've learned it, you forget what it was like to not have known that before. And in 1990, there was a student at Stanford named Elizabeth that was doing a D study around this idea. And her dissertation was very simple. She brought people into a room, and she would have one person that was a listener and one person that was a tapper. And the person that was a tapper, she would give them a list of 120 songs. And they were songs that would have been familiar: Happy Birthday, The Star-Spangled Banner, Jingle Bells, etc. And she would look at the tapper and she would say, here's what I want you to do. I just want you to tap on the table the song. And I want you to tap it. And then the listener, their job was to listen to the taps and to write down the song they were tapping. After 120 songs, the average rate that somebody would get the song right, that the listener would hear it correctly, they would get 3 out of 120 correct. It means they were only right 2.5% of the time. But for those that were tapping, the other thing that they noticed is they were tapping, and the tappers were noticing the person doesn't get it. It was driving them crazy. They were getting upset because they're like, it's Happy Birthday. Like you've sung this song at least once a year your entire life. Like you know the song, you should do it. And they would tap it harder. And they would do it, and they're like, how can you not hear this? And the thing is, in their head, while they're tapping, they're singing the song. But the person listening, they just hear a bunch of taps. It's the curse of knowledge. That once I understand something and know it, then I'm trying to share that. And the other people, they're driving me crazy. And I'm like, how many of you in your marriages, that's been an argument? Right? You're just sitting here going like, no, you don't understand. And they're like, no, I hear you. You're not explaining it. And it's this, we just aren't on the same page. See, that's the curse of knowledge. And we begin to walk around and say, listen, if I could just share with you and just help you to understand and to just know what I know. And when that becomes the primary thing versus knowing God as the primary, we lose patience with people. We look at them and say, well, you just aren't smart enough. You just don't know enough. And then we begin to believe that ourselves and say, well, if I just understood more or knew more or could follow more, then I would get life right. But the intellect is a terrible God. But it wasn't just Solomon that dealt with this. In the New Testament, there's a guy named Paul. And Paul, he would have been known, he was a scholar of scholars. He was brilliant. I mean, he's so brilliant that he's writing this book that we have called Philippians, and he's writing to the church in Philippi that he had planted. He's making up words for the resurrection to try to explain the theological thing that happened there. Like, this guy's that kind of brilliant that he makes up words, and everybody goes, we know what you mean by that. He's writing the book to a church in Ephesus, in the region of Ephesus, and it's called the book of Ephesians. And we have to remember, although he was brilliant, he was a pastor first. And here's what Paul says to the Ephesians in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 16. He says, I pray for you constantly, asking God, the glorious Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, to give you spiritual wisdom and insight so that you might grow in your knowledge of God. He goes, I want to give you something. And I'm trusting and praying the God that we serve, that he's going to give you spiritual wisdom, insight, and knowledge. But it's not knowledge of something. It's a knowledge of someone. Because the someone is more important than the something. And so I want to give you this knowledge. And if this is me in that moment, I'm like, all right, Paul's about to give me some knowledge about God. I can't wait till he comes to my town and puts on a lecture. I can't wait for the next seminar. Paul, when's your next book coming out? When's your next YouTube video that I can consume the information that you have? Paul, give me your lecture. He didn't do that. The next verse, it says, and I pray that your hearts would be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope he has given to those he called. You are his holy people who are rich in his glorious inheritance. He goes, I'm not going to give you another lecture. I'm going to just pray more for you. I'm going to pray that your hearts will be flooded with light. This is a different kind of, some translations say he's praying that they would be enlightened, that they would have an enlightenment. And it's not the same enlightenment that we had in the 17th and 18th centuries, right? Where we said, let's take faith and mystery and push it aside and just deal with logic and facts and figures and the scientific revolution and the scientific method and hypothesis, and I need to be able to test it over and over and over again. And then if it tests out over time, now I'll believe it. That's all good and needed, but what Paul's doing here, he's saying, I want you to have a different kind of enlightenment. That you would be flooded with the confidence of who you are and what God has made you to be. And then he keeps praying for them. I pray that you would understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. This, after all, is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. He goes, this is what I'm praying for you, is that you would better understand the incredible greatness of God. What God has done for you, what God is doing for you, who you are in him. I want you to know that. Yes, you can go and get knowledge and you can get wisdom and you can study and you can get intellect, but if you do all of that and you're missing God, you're missing the point. I want you to grow in understanding the person of who God is. You see, this is why I think what Solomon is trying to teach us and what Paul comes back to here is that knowledge is something, but God is everything. That knowledge is something, and it's a beautiful thing, and we should want it and we should desire it, but it can't be our everything. Knowledge cannot be the thing that we put up and say, that's what I want more than anything. And so please hear my heart in all of this. I am not knocking any sort of education system. I am not knocking needing to learn more and grow more. I heard a stat years ago, and I don't know if it's true anymore or not. But it stuck with me and it convicted me that the stat that I heard was that if you took a worldwide poll, the majority of the world has no higher than a third grade education level. And then the next step after that goes to sixth grade education level, and then it just drops off. Which is why when I had the opportunity to go get my master's, and I had an opportunity to go, and currently I'm writing my dissertation for my doctorate, that when I had those opportunities, I looked at it and I said, yes, this is a gift, that knowledge is a gift from God because of where I was born and how I was born. I have the gift of this, and I want to steward that well, but it is a gift. Knowledge is something, but it's not everything, so I can't let that become, in any sort of a degree or education, become the thing that I say, that is my identity. I go, no, those are beautiful tools that I have been given, but God is my everything. God is the one that I'm going to pursue at all costs. Which means I still have questions. See, I believe that there's probably some here that you came and maybe you don't know God yet. And for whatever reason you're here, I am so glad you're here, and I want you to know this is a safe place that you can come and ask questions. This is a safe place to come and explore your faith. None of us have it figured out all the way yet. We are on a journey of discovering more and more and more of who this God is. But I also want to let you know that you're always going to have questions. And so if what's holding you back from a relationship with Jesus is you're like, I've just got this one question, then until somebody can answer this, I'm not going to follow. I'm not going to trust. I'm not going to take the step of faith. I'm going to say, you don't really understand what faith is. Faith is looking at God and saying, I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm going to trust you. Because knowing more will get me somewhere, but it's not going to get me where I'm really wanting to go, and that's knowing who you are, God. And we can understand this because if you're married in the room, you did this, right? This is a familiar illustration, right? Where on my wedding day, I stood across from my bride. And I made some vows, and we entered into a relationship with one another. And we were young. Like, I didn't know who I was, much less who she was. I didn't know the first thing about marriage. We were just excited that we had so many questions. In some ways, I have more questions now than I did then, right? And it's like, I constantly, but we took a step of faith. Our parenting, right? There's that moment at the hospital where you're sitting there and the nurse comes in and says, hey, I need you to load the kid into the car seat and strap him in safe because I need to know you can do that before I can let you go home. And you look at the nurse and you're like, okay, that's great. This is my first kid. Could you show me how to do that? And the nurse goes, no, I'm not allowed to do it. I have to know that you know how. And the nurse leaves the room and you're like, car seat, baby, YouTube. That'll do. Okay, yeah, all right, here's how we do it. Okay, pull the thing. And then you're like, hey, nurse, I'm ready. And the nurse comes in and checks, and the nurse goes, all right, yep, you're discharged. You can go home. And so you pick up that car seat, and you're walking out, and it hits you, and you're like, whoa, wait, that was the test? Like, that was it. The test of whether I am ready to be a parent or not was whether I could put a kid in a car seat, and I YouTubed that. Like, there is not enough YouTube videos in the world to teach me how to be a parent. I have so many questions, and the world goes, we know. But you'll figure it out. You see, God is constantly coming to us and saying, listen, I know you're not ready. I know you still have questions. Trust me. Step into that relationship. Follow me. And along the way, I will grow in you your faith. You don't have to do it on your own. But there's probably others here that maybe you've been walking with God for a while. And you have a relationship with him, but you've fallen into the trap of just jumping from Bible study to Bible study to Bible study at this church or at any church in the area, and you are just constantly trying to consume more and more and more information about who God is, and you think that if I can just get more information about him, then my life would be rich and it would be deep and I would be a better Christian. And so you come on Sundays and you sit and you're listening to the sermon and you're waiting for that pithy nugget of something that's new to you and is a new thing about the Bible, so that you learned something, all the while missing the steps of obedience that God's calling you to. See, I'm fully convinced that many of us that have been walking with Jesus for a long time are already educated beyond our level of obedience. And so God comes in and he says, knowledge isn't everything. I want you to know me, and I'm calling you to take steps of faith and obedience with me. So come and yes, continue to learn more. I am an infinite God, and you will never understand me fully. But if you understand a lot of who I am, but you've missed me in the process, then you're missing it. I want you to know me. There's a great illustration of this that I heard years ago from a pastor. He said, it's as if I was to go to my teenage daughter and go to my teenage daughter and say, hey, sweetheart, I need you to go clean your room. So my daughter goes upstairs and she starts cleaning her room, and I can hear her moving and doing what she is in her room to clean it. And then all of a sudden it gets quiet, but I'm distracted. I don't really think about it. And I look down and 30 minutes has gone by, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go check on her. And I go upstairs and knock on the door, and she opens the door and the room is not clean. And I look at her and go, hey, I sent you up here to clean your room. Did you not hear me? I said, clean your room. And my daughter goes, oh, yeah, Dad, absolutely, I heard you. I heard you loud and clear. And so I came up here and I walked into my room and I started to clean, and then I just stopped. And I thought, what does it mean to clean one's room? I mean, it's a phrase that we use so often, but what does that really mean? And so, Dad, I just started to ponder all the different words of that sentence, and I got stuck on this one, your. I mean, your word, it's a possessive word, but is it really mine? I mean, do any of us really own anything, Dad? I mean, what is yours and what is mine? And Dad, I was thinking about it so much and that I couldn't figure it out. So I jumped on FaceTime or Snapchat or whatever, and I got my friends together and I said, guys, let's sit down. I want to talk about what it means to clean your room. And so could we have this conversation? Dad, you'll never believe it. One of my friends, they had this book that gives you like the etymology of words. And so we went back into the Latin and into the Greek, and we now know the Greek meaning for clean your room. Dad, would you want to hear it? Dad, I heard you. I know more now than I've ever known about what it means to clean my room. So clean your room. Oh, don't we do that with God? We spend so much time trying to get more and more and more. And if I just had a little bit more information, if I just was a little smarter, if I just was a little wiser, if I just had their thing or his thing or her thing or that, then, and God's going, no, clean your room. You've replaced knowing about me for me. Which is why there's one question for us. And the question is really simple, is how is God asking you to trust his wisdom? How is God asking you to step out and to trust him? And maybe in ways that don't make sense to you. Maybe in ways where the logic's not there. Maybe it's that step of faith for the first time or the 1,000th time that God is saying, listen, you are trying to think your way through this, and you're thinking through it so much that you're never making a decision and doing anything. I've put in you this beautiful brain. Make a decision and follow me and trust me. Maybe God's calling you to go in a direction that doesn't seem logical, and you're trying to figure out the logic of it, and he's saying, no, I want you to take the step of faith and follow me. How is God asking you to trust his wisdom? And have you replaced your own understanding for instead trusting God's understanding? Saying, God, I'm going to trust your wisdom, not my intellect. Let's pray together. Father, we just come before you. I thank you so much for each individual here. God, would you allow us to just pursue you? To trust in you. Your wisdom, not mine. God, help me to give grace to other people in the process. It's in the name of Jesus that I pray all of these things. Amen. We want to continue to worship now, as always, through communion. So as the servers come forward, they're going to have trays in, and one of them is a piece of bread that represents Jesus' body that was broken for us. The other is a cup of juice that's his blood that was poured out. And it's a moment where any of us that are followers of Jesus, you can take communion while the music is being played, but it's the reminder. It's the reminder that God, in his infinite intelligence and in his infinite wisdom, he said, what is crooked cannot be made straight because my people have rebelled against me and they cannot make it straight on their own. And so he came and he died and he rose from the dead, conquering sin and death so we could have relationship with him. And then he said, but that's not even the least of it. I'm then going to send the Spirit, and the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in me. Lives in every single follower of Jesus. So we take communion in order to remember what God has done for us and is doing for us. If you're not yet a follower of Jesus, this is a great time to just sit and maybe think about it or meditate or have a conversation with God. That's what we would call prayer. Say, God, I just have some questions for you, but I want to just hear from you. I believe that God loves you and he wants to speak to you. If you call our church home, we every week want to give you an opportunity to give to what this church is doing. And gosh, historically, our church has given so sacrificially so that we can continue to do amazing things. I believe that God is still calling us to huge, big things in the future, and I am so excited that you are a part of that. So at the end of the service, on your way out, there's Give and Connect boxes. For those that call this place home, to continue to say, God, I'm going to trust you and trust this church with what you have given me. Because we're all in this together. If you're a guest with us, there's no pressure to give. We are so glad that you are here. But for all of you, I want to invite you to take this moment of communion and just meet God in it. So let's take communion now.
Your love has brought us out of the darkness and into the light, lifting our sorrows, bearing our burdens, healing our hearts. Sing to our God. To our God we lift up one voice. To our God we lift up one song. To our God we lift up one voice. We're singing hallelujah. To our God we lift up one voice. To our God we lift up one song. To our God we lift up one voice. We're singing hallelujah. Hallelujah.
you so much for being here. I just trust and hope that this week, God would continue to teach you more and more about who He is as we pursue knowing more about Him. We would find Him deeply in that process. If you want prayer after the service, then you're invited to either side here in the front on the wings. Somebody would love nothing more than to pray with you and for you this week. If you're new with us, then over here to your left in the front, we've got a yellow banner that says I'm new here on it. And we have I'm new here. It's for anybody that just maybe has some questions about who we are as a church, or maybe you want to meet somebody on the staff and talk to them about something going on. And then I want to, again, just remind everyone that out in the lobby, we have signups for the IF gathering going on. And I have been told that there are plenty of cake pops to go around. And so listen, go over there, check it out, ask your questions, and enjoy a cake pop. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.